Under the vast Arabian sky where the winds carry secrets of ancient tribes and the moonlight silvers the shifting dunes, there lived a poet whose voice was softer than the desert breeze, yet stronger than the echoes of thunder. His name was written on hearts before it was written on paper, whispered in the marketplaces, sung in the gatherings, carried in the rhythm of the camel's stride and the gallop of the horse. He was Fazza, the falcon-hearted son of Dubai, the prince whose soul belonged not only to palaces and crowns, but to the common man, the rider of the sands, the dreamer of horizons. His words were not made of ink alone, but of fire, of longing, of patience, of courage, of the beauty that comes from carrying both tradition and tomorrow in one heart. He walked among his people not like a ruler but like a brother. In the marketplace he greeted the old, in the stables he brushed the mane of horses, in the desert he leaned into the wind as though it were his closest companion. The world saw a leader, but the desert knew a poet, and the poet knew love. Not the love of fleeting desire, but the kind that burns like an endless lamp in the chambers of the soul, the kind that cannot be hidden by titles or boundaries. When Fazza wrote, he poured his heart into every verse, as though each word was a seed carried by the wind to bloom in the heart of a stranger. His poetry was not decoration. It was a mirror where humanity saw its truest face. The desert nights shaped his rhythm. Stars stitched stories above him, and he read them as though they were pages of an open book. He would sit upon the warm sand with silence pressing close, and suddenly lines would come, flowing like water from a hidden spring. Sometimes they spoke of horses whose hooves were drums of destiny, sometimes of falcons whose wings carried messages of freedom, sometimes of a love that remained unseen but alive in every heartbeat. His pen was never still, because his soul was restless, and his soul could never be silenced. But love, love was always present, even when he wrote of war, even when he wrote of loyalty, even when he wrote of the desert's pride. For Fazza's heart belonged to more than one realm. It belonged to Dubai, it belonged to the desert, it belonged to poetry, but above all it belonged to a woman unseen yet always felt. Her presence was a horizon he never stopped chasing. In every gallop, in every ride, in every word, there was her shadow, graceful as the moon. He wrote her into metaphors, concealed her within stars, hid her name inside the folds of rhythm. She was his secret, yet she was his universe. And so the desert became his diary, the winds became his messengers. He would ride into the silence and let the world disappear, only to find her voice within the beating of his own chest. At times he feared to lose her, at times he feared to name her, but always he carried her in the sanctuary of his lines. In the heart of the desert where silence hums like a sacred prayer and the winds carve poems across the golden face of the dunes, there lived a soul whose name was sung like music by the shifting sands. He was known as Fazza, the falcon-hearted prince, the rider of winds, the dreamer who stitched verses into the very fabric of the horizon. His footsteps carried both the weight of heritage and the lightness of love, and wherever he stood the land itself seemed to breathe poetry, as though the palm trees swayed not by the air alone but by the rhythm of his words. The desert was his first teacher, its vastness whispering to him lessons of patience, endurance, and freedom. Beneath the blazing sun he felt the fire of determination, and beneath the moonlit nights he learned the tenderness of longing. To him, every dune was not just sand but a resting memory of those who came before, ancestors who carried their dreams on camelback and left their echoes on the wind. Fazza would walk among them, speaking in silence, and in that conversation he found the voice that would make the world pause to listen. He spoke of love as though it were water, rare and precious, yet overflowing when found. His heart was not bound to walls of palaces nor confined to jewels that sparkled under chandeliers, for he believed true wealth was the sigh of a lover, the touch of loyalty, the warmth of sincerity. In his poetry, love was not just between man and woman, it was between man and life, between soul and destiny, between a rider and his horse, between the falcon and the skies. Each verse was a journey, stretching far beyond ink, carrying the reader into realms where silence itself wept with beauty. He loved the horses that thundered across the earth, their hooves writing stories faster than any pen. To ride was to breathe, to feel the pulse of another heart beneath him, to share with an animal the exhilaration of freedom. The wind rushed against his face and he would laugh, not with arrogance but with gratitude, because to him the gallop was a reminder that even kings must bow to speed, even princes must surrender to the thrill of nature's force. His stables were not prisons but sanctuaries, where horses were treated as companions, not possessions. Each mane carried secrets, each eye reflected trust, and Fazza was the keeper of both. Yet if the horse was his companion of earth, the falcon was his companion of sky. The falcon was not caged, for Fazza believed no wings should be chained. When he released it into the heavens, his eyes followed with reverence, as though watching a prayer ascend. The falcon would vanish into clouds, only to return, and in its return Fazza found a symbol of loyalty. He wrote of this bond often, of freedom and return, of distance and closeness, of how love can wander and yet belong, of how souls that are destined always find their way home. But beyond animals, beyond desert, beyond riches, there was the heart of Fazza, the heart that longed,